Aron Kaufman spent 6 years at the center of Fast and Loud. His admirers watched as he constructed incredible cars in unthinkable time. However, he turned his back on millions in 2017. The true explanation was not visible to the audience. Between him and Richard Rawlings, something had gone horribly wrong behind the cameras. It has to do with money. The ability to be creative was taken. Aron found himself training his own replacement. The last treachery occurred during a perilous vehicle build that almost claimed a life. Everyone at Discovery Channel was taken aback by his subsequent actions. Aron Kaufman was born in Crowley, Texas, on January 26, 1982. He didn't have a lot growing up. David Gerald Kaufman, his father, was a mechanic who put in 12 hours a day and earned only $8.50 per hour. Aron had to share a small room with his younger brother Jared when the family moved into a small trailer park in 1992. However, even in that difficult environment, an odd thing began to occur. Using a screwdriver and a kitchen knife, Aron disassembled their damaged lawnmower when he was just 10 years old. Instead than only fixing it, he improved its functionality. With roughly 15% greater power, it sliced more quickly and powerfully than before. It wasn't serendipity. He had been reading his dad's maintenance manuals every night in secret, often dozing off while still holding greasy pages. He was 8 years old when he first learned to drive his grandfather's 1968 Ford F-100 pickup truck. It was more than just transportation in that vehicle. He found a sense of aliveness there, and it became his tiny world. The scent of oil and gasoline became permanently ingrained in his memory. Later, everything would change because of that same truck. Aron converted the backyard into his own workshop when he was 12. Using shopping carts and lawnmower engines, he constructed go-karts. No, these weren't toys. Some of them were capable of reaching speeds of up to 35 miles per hour on normal roadways. He borrowed a stick welder and used it to teach himself how to weld. Then again, his first serious accident happened. He was testing one of his own exhaust systems in December 1994 when it exploded. His arm was severely burned by molten metal, requiring 23 stitches. For 6 weeks he was unable to use his dominant right arm. In an old shed behind the trailer, Aron had already concealed more tools than his mother wanted to take away. The family had to use their whole $200 holiday budget for hospital fees rather than presents that same week, 3 days before Christmas. He would never forget that memory. Aron ceased attending when he had started high school in 1998. He missed 127 of 180 days of school in a single year. He was working, not slack. He worked in unauthorized auto businesses around Dallas County, fixing cars for as little as $4.25 an hour. When he was 16, he undertook a transmission rebuild that was deemed necessary by 3 qualified mechanics. After completing it in 11 hours, Aron received $200, his first official salary. The principal of the school once looked through his locker and discovered crumpled money totaling $1,400 from weekend repairs. That was more than the majority of Crowley's adults earned in a month. Upon noticing Aron's gift, his shop teacher surreptitiously assisted him in continuing his education by fabricating his attendance. Aron would slip out through the window of his bedroom at night and use a flashlight to fix engines. His arms were burned and he was covered in oil when he returned home. The fact was far more profound than his parents' belief that he was harming himself. He left college at the age of 18 in January 2000 after only 1 semester, despite having a 3.7 GPA and a $3,200 annual partial scholarship. His father was distraught. To cover that tuition, he had been putting in extra hours, but Aron had already decided what he wanted to do. Classrooms were over for him. Even though Aron had really constructed his own gearbox design using just $50 worth of trash parts, one of his engineering instructors had criticized it as unrealistic. Aron had already borrowed $4,800 from loan sharks who paid 28% interest to purchase tools, but no one knew this. For 3 months, the family's trailer was without electricity because to his dropout. In order to keep themselves afloat, Aron looked for paid couple jobs while they lighted candles at night. On September 12, 1999, later that year, Aron made a risky decision. He competed in races on a dirt bike that he had customized. It had 78 horsepower, much greater than its initial 46. At 65 miles per hour, he crashed while attempting to jump a 15-foot ravine. He suffered 3 fractures to his right wrist. The doctors had to insert a cast and 2 titanium pins. The procedure came around $8,400. That was not the type of money the family had. Their only remaining vehicle had to be sold. That Ford F-100 from 1968 that began it all. Something amazing occurred by 2002. At a Dallas garage, Aron met Richard Rawlings when he was barely 20 years old. Richard offered Aron a position at his new store, Gas Monkey Garage, after observing Aron's work style. A 15-year relationship that would transform their lives began then. Aron took over as the main fabricator. Aron's steady hand and imaginative intellect made Gas Monkey a reality, even if it had existed for years. He was laying the groundwork for a company that would soon be shown on television, not only repairing automobiles. A rusting 1968 Chevrolet Corvette was one of Aron's first significant undertakings in 2008. He made new exhausts, rebuilt the Ford 27 big block engine, and did all the restoration by hand. The car only cost $8,500 to acquire and fix, but it sold for $5,800. Aron's $50,000 profit demonstrated that he wasn't merely a gearhead. He had brilliant business sense. He tried something even more bizarre in 2010, 2 years later. He combined the body of a 1970 Dodge Charger with a Viper V10 engine. They almost lost the store as a result of how hard it was. The electronic systems were incompatible. Rawlings considered permanently closing down at one point as the expenses skyrocketed. At the Dallas Autorama, however, the car won Best Modified Classic once it was eventually put together. A 351 Cleveland engine from a destroyed Torino and seats from 3 different cars were among the primarily recycled items Aron used to restore a 1972 Mustang in 2011. However, there was a heated argument between Aron and Rawlings after safety examinations showed that several parts were excessively worn out. Aron said he was more concerned with making money than keeping people safe. Caused a complete overhaul of their regulations and their first significant disagreement. The riskiest period occurred in October 2011. At a drag strip, Aron drove his customized 1969 Chevy C10. There were 720 horsepower in the vehicle. At more than 6,800 revolutions per minute, the engine burst on one run, sending metal flying in all directions. Maria Rodriguez, a woman, sustained a shoulder injury. 18 stitches were required. Gas Monkey was sued for $75,000. The insurance provider declined to pay for it. He used his own money to cover her expenses. He stopped racing for 2 years after that collision. In June 2012, Aron Kaufman embarked on his Fast and Loud trip. Additionally, it pushed him to the limit from the start. He has 9 days to rebuild a 1931 Model A Ford for a big swap meet in the first episode. Viewers were unaware of the cost he incurred to do that. He and his crew worked more than 110 hours a week to build 12 cars in 24 weeks during season 1 alone. Aron was so worn out that he actually slept off in a car while the cameras were rolling. He needed to use a hose to take a shower behind the garage. Additionally, he traveled 14 hours each week between Fort Worth and Gas Monkey Garage in northwest Dallas. He appeared to be too exhausted in several scenes to keep his eyes open. It was obvious that this pace was not sustainable. Furthermore, it didn't by 2016. In 2013, one of the most trying times occurred. Richard Rawlings and Dennis Collins paid $400,000 for a 1991 Ferrari F40 that had been ruined after it had collided with a fence and was used by the team. Had traveled just 7,148 kilometers before to the collision. Aron oversaw the reconstruction, tearing it down entirely with the assistance of Ferrari specialists. The clutch, flywheel, exhaust, twin turbos, and even race wheels were all improved. However, behind the scenes, Richard continued to override Aron's decisions due to disagreements. The vehicle's final coat was black, rather than Ferrari red. And while it became the most well-known construction in the garage, it also revealed something brutally obvious. Richard and Aron disagreed greatly over the proper way to construct automobiles. In 2016, conditions worsened. In charge of the De Tomaso Pantera EcoBoost construction was Aron. It went too far for him, and it was one of the most difficult projects they had ever worked on. Despite only being a few weeks behind schedule, Aron claimed that the automobile was much beyond what could be completed correctly under the strict time constraints of a television show. He felt pressured to take shortcuts all the time. With its complete racetrack turbos, the 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine managed to generate 472 horsepower and 498 lb-ft of torque. However, Aron was unconcerned with the figures. The job meant something to him. The build contradicted all he held dear. That's when he realized that televisions could not handle the size of the cars he intended to construct. That initiative turned into a roadblock. At that point, Aron also started to experience significant personal issues. His fame had begun to drag him down. In the midst of a season, he considered resigning due to panic attacks. It was crushing pressure, he added. His relationship with his girlfriend was impacted. Even his staff, as well as his dogs. Despite having an emergency appendectomy at one point, he returned to work a few days later since the cameras continued to roll. His old co-workers claimed that they worked so much that they had forgotten what a typical day in the life looked like. Despite Aron's inward collapse, viewers only saw the cool, collected bearded mechanic. As a sore spot, the identical Pantera build reappeared in 2016. Despite Aron's diligence, Richard chastised him for his tardiness. Behind the scenes, they argued about how much could actually be accomplished given the limited funds and short turnaround time. Aron charged Richard with making cuts that would degrade the quality of the project. The TV drama was clearly outperforming the craftsmanship, and this was becoming increasingly apparent. Eventually erupted during a demanding motorbike build in 2017. Richard continuously overruled Aron in front of the team and attempted to dominate every aspect of the project. Aron closed the door to his office and moved away from the group. Then one day, in the middle of filming, he simply left the set. While Discovery Channel attempted to defuse the situation, production halted for 3 days. But that moment wasn't the only one. Months had passed with increasing tension. Aron had had enough of the boardroom negotiations that had replaced their friendship. And then there was something even more distressing. Fans viewed Aron as the show's main character, however, leaked paperwork from 2016 revealed that he was receiving significantly less money than he was entitled to. Aron's contract didn't reflect the fact that his work was responsible for 80% of the show's popularity, according to insiders. Richard had made far more than the $3 million he had in 2021. Later, Aron learned that he was even training mechanics to take his job. That was the last insult. He became aware of the financial and creative exploitation he had endured. In 2017, he finally referred to it as a creative prison. In a podcast, Aron said that the garage was no longer used to build actual automobiles but rather as a TV set. Each construct was made for a camera, not the craft. Drama now took precedence over quality. He was devastated. He claimed to be stuck in a system that valued narrative over talent. There was one final betrayal that year. The team was alerted to significant safety concerns during the construction of a specialized semi-truck. However, Richard desired quick test driving footage. While driving, the truck almost broke down. Aron claimed he wouldn't continue working if lives were being put in danger for the sake of ratings. His name seemed to be attached to risky shortcuts that he didn't support. Then, on March 6, 2017, Aron quietly announced his departure from Gas Monkey Garage on Facebook. The fans were astonished. He had spent more than a year organizing the departure. He acknowledged that he had been examined for several months. Instead than feeling like a job transition, the post seemed more like a breakup letter. The past 5 years have felt like 20, he continued. Emotions erupted among the fans. The drama didn't stop there, but nobody anticipated it. A $6 million lawsuit was filed against Richard Rawlings in June 2018. from the grill and gas monkey bar. A $3.5 million transaction was allegedly the target of his attempted sabotage. Aron was a vital witness who was pulled into the chaos. The case exposed the extent to which the backstage situation had deteriorated. When both parties reached a settlement in August 2019, the dispute was over, but the harm was already done. High expectations were raised when Aron launched his own program, Shifting Gears, in 2018, but it quickly failed. Ratings fell precipitously. Aron appeared to be hired on camera. Even declared his burnout to his supporters. Reviews were negative. Some claimed that Aron lacked Richard's enthusiasm and that the show was dull. Only 12 episodes were produced. Another scandal followed. For forsaking a $300,000 bespoke automobile project, a 1969 Corvette L88, a Shelby Super Snake Mustang, and a Ferrari F40, he was sued by clients in 2019. He had accepted large sums of money but left before they were paid. Later, one of the Ferraris was seized in a separate fraud investigation. The lawsuits seriously harmed his reputation. One final unexpected turn occurred in 2020. According to leaked emails, Richard attempted to entice Aron to return by offering him complete creative authority and a double of his previous salary. Richard instructed him to return when he was ready. Remained motionless. He just said, "You went with TV. I went with constructing." That is the distinction. He then permanently left. For the most part, Aron Kaufman was seen as taking a risk when he departed Fast and Loud in 2017. However, none anticipated the industry-shaking impact of his maiden chassis build under his new firm, ArcLight Fabrication. He created a unique chassis for vintage Ford F-100 trucks, which he sold for $150,000. That figure astounded the community, Howie Sosler, since the majority of full F-100 builds cost less than half that, typically between $30,000 and $60,000. Aron was no ordinary constructor, though. He had become legendary for his fabricating skills after 15 years of employment at Gas Monkey Garage. He employed unique mounts, customized suspension geometry, and welding that resembled that of a fighter plane. Rivals were unsure about how to interpret it. Some claimed he was only charging the prices of a celebrity. However, the fact was that his art did appear to be unique. And then catastrophe struck. In 2019, ArcLight Fabrication was devastated by a fire that destroyed inventory valued at $50,000. It wasn't just the monetary loss that was the worst. It was the way it was. Investigators discovered that the fire was caused by defective wiring, which Aron had himself installed. He wired the expansion himself to save money rather than paying a certified electrician. That error almost caused the store to fail. A worker had left welding equipment hooked into the wall prior to the weekend. The sparks ignited when it overloaded the circuit. Among the lost goods were rare 1960s Ford parts, some of which Aron had collected for decades. Even more startling was the fact that ArcLight's insurance was not complete. He continued to operate and fulfill customer orders while covering the full loss out of pocket. However, it cost him not just money but also weeks of wasted time. Didn't become any simpler in 2020. For the same vintage trucks on which he made his reputation, Aron sold electric conversion kits that year. The move caused indignation rather than applause. The kits cost between $35,000 and $45,000 and used Tesla Model S batteries. Purists of Ford, however, were unimpressed. He was destroying history, they said. Jerry Hathaway, a car historian, argued with Aron for 45 minutes at the 2020 SEMA exhibition, calling the conversions a sacrilege. There were more than 500 irate emails. Orders from certain consumers were canceled. Worth more than $200,000. Clubs vowed to stop supporting him. However, a startling event then occurred. Younger buyers came flooding in. For electrified builds, 150 people made deposits in less than 6 months. The market was obviously divided as a result of the debate. Was currently straddling the boundary between contemporary innovation and traditional restoration. A behind-the-scenes interview in 2022 disclosed information Aron had previously kept to himself. He had only 60 days left in 2018 to permanently close ArcLight. Following his departure from the show, he lost his $35,000 weekly salary, and his new business was drowning in startup debt totaling $750,000. Sales did not proceed as planned. The 1963 Ford Falcon he owned and used for the Pikes Peak hill climb had to be sold, merely to make payroll, for $65,000. 5 of the banks denied his loan applications. The debt-to-income ratio has risen to more than 300%. Only until a collaboration with Restomod Air invested $400,000 in the business did things start to improve. Aron had almost declared bankruptcy and had already let go of 4 workers by that point. It wasn't televised, but that narrative was true. Things have completely changed by 2024. Not only was ArcLight manufacture thriving, it was thriving. Wheels, not trucks, were the greatest source of revenue. Aron's custom F100 wheel business brought in $2 million a year. Every set. Price range, $2,800 to $4,200. They were first used on Instagram by influencers, and soon orders were flooding in from countries like the UK, Germany, and Australia. Customers still had to pay for shipping, which ranged from $800 to $1,200 each set by itself. ArcLight's revenue from online sales increased from 23% in 2019 to 78% today. Aron, without the support of television, had transformed a small local store into a worldwide e-commerce company. However, there were personal challenges that accompanied the triumph. In 2020, there were rumors of problems in Aron and Charlene Fleming's marriage. Prior to their 2018 marriage, they had been together for over a decade. His 16-hour workdays, however, left little time for his family, according to friends. He was rarely seen with a ring during events. Arguments over him prioritizing his career above his family were detailed by close sources. 2021 saw them try therapy. However, Aron said nothing in recent interviews regarding if they were still together. He was fighting more than just relationship problems. Aron had a mental health crisis after quitting Fast and Loud. He acknowledged in 2023 how hard the fame crash hit him. Once, he appeared on national television. Then he was just a person attempting to sell chassis parts in a shop. Panic episodes were a part of his life. He questioned himself. He attended twice-weekly treatment sessions for more than a year. Years of social pressure helped him manage his anxiety with the help of EMDR therapy. The mist gradually cleared. Then the health scare struck. Aron passed out in his store late one night in March 2021 while working alone. There was an appendix rupture. He was discovered at 3:47 a.m. unconscious, beside an unfinished F100 frame. Dallas Presbyterian Hospital received him in a hurry. Because the illness had advanced too far, the surgery took 6 hours. When he developed peritonitis, a second emergency surgery was performed. ArcLight was offline for nearly 4 months. The estimated amount of lost revenue was $340,000. Aron eventually slowed down after that near miss. In addition to hiring extra employees, he pledged never to work alone at night again. His cryptocurrency holdings, however, crashed just when everything appeared to be stable. In late 2021, Aron had invested $1.2 million in cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and even a few cryptocurrencies with automotive themes. By the middle of 2022, he had lost 85%. That depleted his own savings of $1.02 million. He had to sell 2 of his rare F100s, including a 1956 prototype valued at $180,000, and mortgage his Dallas business in order to sustain himself. Additionally, he had to postpone his ideal documentary production on Route 66 by almost a year due to the loss. In November 2024, Aron finally returned to the public eye. Nobody anticipated the new endeavor he revealed at the CMA show in Las Vegas. He had been covertly purchasing vehicles associated with Route 66's past. A 1949 Ford F1 and a 1962 Chevy Impala from the original Route 66 television series were among the vehicles he intended to rebuild. The Smithsonian and the National Park Service were partners. Even the possibility of making the project into a new series was raised by Discovery Channel. $2.3 million is the project's budget. Crowdfunding was a contributing factor. Private collectors supplied the remaining amount. It was his most ambitious endeavor to date. At the same time, ArcLight began fusing electric innovation with traditional design. They started selling electric models that resembled historical trucks but had Tesla-like performance. Modern battery technology and traditional craftsmanship were used in his Austin facility. This tactic put him at the forefront of a brand new industry, sustainable hot rodding. He regained his $8 million net worth in 2023. His Austin shop now performed complete F100 restorations for $75,000 to $150,000. MagnaFlow, automobiles, and other brands were among his deals. Held a race at Pikes Peak. In addition to producing his own show, he tested fresh ideas every day while driving a customized 2004 Ford F-150. Each action was a component of a larger strategy to maintain momentum, autonomy, and control. Aron has been candid about the ways that the TV spotlight altered him. He claimed that working 110-hour weeks to create drama for the camera was no longer what he desired. There was more to his departure from Gas Monkey Garage than business. It was about creating things that were important to him. Despite all of the failures and near collapses, he continues to do that today.